Hello and welcome to Right Brain Rounds with Dr. Corinna Muller. We hope you enjoyed today's podcast, and as always, thank you for listening.
Welcome to Right Brain Rounds. Today I have Dr. Heather Tauschek with us. She is a board-certified radiologist, and she'll tell us a little bit more about herself, of course, and visual artist. And I thought it would be interesting to invite her to come and talk to us about how being a visual artist and a radiologist have a lot of overlap. So welcome, Dr. Tauschek.
Thank you for having me. It's really fun.
So tell me a little bit about your training and how you got to the point in your life that you are right now as a certified breast imager in the state of Alaska.
Wow. It was kind of a long road. I went into medicine originally because I thought I was going to be a medical missionary. And so there's a big winding story between that and being a radiologist in Anchorage, Alaska. But I really tried to stay open to myself and to understanding who I was along the way. And as time evolved, it became clear that I was supposed to be a radiologist. Originally, I wanted to be a neurosurgeon, but when I did my neurosurgery rotations, I realized that they were all still in training in their 40s, and every single one of them told me, don't do neurosurgery. And I was smart enough at that time in life to actually listen to them. So I did neurosurgery. And then I had these wonderful mentors who were geriatricians. And so I went to medical school in New York City, and they had this really cool house call program where once a week for my first year of medical school, I would climb in a cab with these two physicians, and we'd go to people's houses all across New York City. And so, yeah, it was really interesting. And my two mentors were just the most amazing, kind-hearted, gentle people. And so I thought, well, maybe I should be a geriatrician. And so I was planning all the way through my third year, through applications for residency, to go into internal medicine. But being type A that I am, as soon as the time came for the, personal statements to come out, I was writing them, and I was trying to be very honest. And because I think the best writing is always honest writing. And I kept writing, I love internal medicine because, and I couldn't fill in the blank. I just could not fill it in. And so I started to panic a little bit because I've always been pretty organized with my career and things that I wanted to do. And I just, all of a sudden I was in my third year applying for residency, and I had no clue what I wanted to do in medicine. So I had this friend who's a pediatrician, and she and I had been anatomy partners way back in the day. And she said, you were always really good with 3D spatial thinking, because we did x-rays and stuff as part of our anatomy training, and she just couldn't get it. Like, her brain didn't work that way, and mine always did. And her boyfriend at the time was actually a resident up at Mount Sinai in New York City. She said, why don't you go up with him and just spend the day? So randomly, he took me up to the radiology department and toured me through all the different modalities. And I realized what a visual career it is. And, I am highly visually dominant. And so it just started to click. And so I said, okay, I'm going to write a personal statement about radiology and see if I can write it. And so if I can fill in that blank, I want to be a radiologist because, and I sat down and I got it finished, start to finish, 45 minutes, one edit later, and that I was going to be a radiologist. So it was kind of a funny, long story, but I'm really glad that happened, and it happened the way that it did. So that's how I ended up here.
And what is your training in the visual arts? Tell us a little bit about that.
So being a type A, like most, medical type people are, exactly. I went into undergrad. Yeah, I went into undergrad knowing that I wanted to be pre-med, and I had a goal of getting into medical school. So I jumped right in with, all the biochemistry and biology and organic chemistry and physics and all that kind of stuff. But my freshman my college roommate, my freshman year, was an art major, and she and I are still very close friends today. And she said, you are just too serious. She said, slow down a little bit, have a little bit of fun. She said, I think you would really like to take some art class, or you'd enjoy taking art classes. And so again, because I've always been kind of open to when people suggest stuff like that, I thought, well, I'll take one. And I had such an amazing time in that class that it ended up being my minor. So I majored in biochemistry and I minored in art, and then took a lot of writing classes along the way. So Jessica completely, helped me reroute my life. I was still able to do all the medical stuff, but she really encouraged me to add this visual element that has just been so rewarding and so enriching. So, and along the way, I figured out that I function best when I'm continuing to use that creative right brain along the way, I'm just happier.
Right. And when you did take some of those art classes in college, what kind of creations did you make?
So mostly what I did was painting. I did have to do some, well, the art courses were a lot of color theory and design theory and ways to use shapes in space. And then I had some printmaking classes. I did a fair number of painting classes. So I paint in oils and primarily watercolor. Lately, I've kind of started doing some batik and stuff, but they were foundational art courses that really just gave me enough confidence to say, hey, I'm an artist. When I went into undergrad, I didn't identify as an artist. And it was really as by part of doing that undergrad minor degree. And then actually through medical school, I continued to take some art classes along the way, and had a show in Manhattan my senior year, my last year of medical school. And those really gave me the confidence to identify as an artist in addition to being a physician.
Do you feel like your upbringing also helped you in exploring that?
Yeah, well, you've met my mom, right? My mom is a glass artist. Yeah. And I think our whole family is just artsy. I think growing up with a mom who makes incredible art out of really funky stuff. I don't know how else to put it. I mean, she's always doing this assemblage like art. She gets glass and then she cuts it up and then she reassembles it. And, and she's always been creative like that. And she painted in watercolor and she always had art projects for us as kids. And so I think it really just became I'm the oldest of three girls. It really just became a part of my identity, and I think our family's identity, because my sister is actually a commercial interior designer, and then my other sister is a teacher, but she's also incredibly creative. So I think it was part of the fabric of our family and continues to be. I mean, my daughter, right, she's 14, and her medium of choice is recycled cardboard and duct tape, right? She makes these crazy creations, and it's funny, but she just kind of falls along that same sort of thinking where she just gets an idea and says, hey, I can do it, I will do it, and then does it. So
he has inspirational people to follow.
Yeah, exactly.
I should give some of the listeners a little bit of a background of how Heather and I knew each other. We met when I was a senior in high school and she was a junior in high school in the Anchorage Youth Symphony. We were both flute players in the symphony. And, I just think it's so awesome to look back on how we grew up here in Alaska and where our paths took us in our lives and how we both became physicians and now are in the same community. And,
again.
and really using kind of art and creativity to help us, as far, for me, I do a lot with music, and that actually brought us back together again.
Yeah. That just, for people listening, I recently went back to school at Berklee College of Music, online. They have an online program, and Corinna was a huge part of that. So, because, we were flute players together, and you are part of a flute quartet, and you were looking for a piano player, and you knew that I played piano. And so we ended up reconnecting that way. And so I played with you guys, and it was just so inspiring for me to get back into music. And I had always wanted to study it and wasn't able to because I was doing art and biochemistry. I just didn't have bandwidth for anything else. So I think you were really pivotal in getting my interest back into the realm of music. And so that's one of the things I'm working on now.
And I just think that's really ambitious, especially being the medical director of a radiology department and, all of the things that you currently do in addition to, pursuing another degrey in music. So tell us.
Well, it might take me 10 years.
That's okay.
I'm only 43.
And when sometimes I can see some of your posts on Facebook because we're friends there, and I see that you're working through doing some compositions and learning new ways to write music. And tell us how that has been for you as, a full-time radiologist and then also now pursuing a music degree.
Well, it's funny because I'm starting out right at freshman level, right? So it's like I'm an 18-year-old going back to college. So having gone through medical school, on one hand, the classes are somewhat ridiculously easy because they're, freshman level courses. But on the other hand, they're stretching a part of my brain that I haven't used really in a long time. So, and then there's actually a lot of music technology that I haven't kept up with, and that's been a little bit daunting. But it's kind of funny. That's where my work as a radiologist reminds me that I can do this, because I have to learn so much new software at work, right? To stay technically adept and on the cutting edge, we have to learn new technologies and new software and all sorts of new things all the time. And so that reminds me, when I'm feeling stymied with my music stuff, that I can do this. I just have to stop, take a breath, and then keep moving forward.
And that's really what medicine is all about, is lifelong learning. I mean, we're just always doing CME, we're going to courses, learning new things. And I know in the field of radiology, there's something new all of the time, all the technology that you guys use, and that your practice brings to our state, which, some people might think that Alaska is pretty remote and doesn't have anything that's newer in technology, but definitely your practice has proved that wrong.
Well, thank you. That's something we try really hard to be at the forefront of a thoughtful application of new technology that's meaningful to our community, if that makes sense.
And I really am proud of you in the way that you serve the women of Alaska, as well as, one of the board certified breast imaging specialists in the state. Can you tell us a little bit about some of the technical things that you do in your position?
Sure. So I am a general radiologist and do probably about 60% general imaging, and then I have fellowship training in breast imaging. So I did extra training just for breast cancer diagnosis and detection and screening. It's kind of an interesting part of radiology, because more so than other parts of radiology, I have a lot of patient contact, and a lot of high anxiety patient contact, because I always tell people, the stats are 1 out of 8 women will get breast cancer over their lifetime. And we all know somebody who has had it. I mean, actually, we were talking about the flutist who was with us in the Youth Symphony, who passed away in her 30s from breast cancer, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
yes, exactly.
And I think my grandmother passed away from breast cancer. So it's very high anxiety for women when they actually have a lump and that sort of thing. So it's a pretty emotionally charged environment. But at the same time, I really love that one-on-one patient interaction that I don't necessarily get in a lot of other parts of radiology. So that was what attracted me to it. But you asked specifically about technology. We've been doing a lot of three-dimensional or tomosynthesis imaging, which is rather than just a standard 2-view mammogram, you get multiple slices through the breast tissue, just like a CAT scan. There are some interesting things on the horizon, like contrast enhanced mammography. We've been doing a lot with identification of women who are higher risk than average, because that's one thing that historically we haven't done a really good job of in our community, is identifying women who are high risk early enough so that they really do benefit from supplemental screening or extra screening modalities. So that's been one of our big big pushes in the community. We actually hired some wonderful breast navigational nurse practitioners in our group to really work with patients and talk about the risks and benefits of supplemental screening or additional screening, and how you kind of navigate those waters as a patient. So it's been really a neat area where our practice has grown in the last couple of years.
And to know that there's someone so compassionate and knowledgeable behind every imaging procedure that happens there, I think is really comforting. I mean, if I knew that I had to go in and have, an extra evaluation, it would be so comforting for me to know that you were behind all of that. And I think that any patient that you have interactions with would feel the same way. And, being able to talk with them, help with, biopsies, do those types of procedures, I think it would just be a real comforting encounter, or at least your practice works to help women in those high anxiety situations to feel better about everything that's going on.
Well, that's the art of medicine too, right? To kind of circle back to similar terminology. It's not just technology, it's application of technology in a compassionate and very thoughtful manner. And that's something we've been very, very dedicated to. I mean, I was able to follow in the footsteps of Denise Farley, who I don't know if she probably retired before you came back to Anchorage, but she is an amazing trailblazer. And she just had this incredible vision for a practice that was at the forefront of technology here in Alaska, and she built that. And and then trained me, kind of raised me up in it before she retired. And so she really, talking about mentors, right? I mean, I really feel like she was an incredible mentor to me, and to help share that guidance and how to keep on the edge of technology and continue pushing for betterment of your practice and improving the services that you provide. And so that's something that I've really tried to do over the past 5 or 6 years. So.
And it's very important to have mentors in a medical career too, that you can emulate, and people who can show you the way. I mean, I feel like I've had many mentors over the course of my training. And one of them really emphasized that, every 5 years, just kind of take a look at your career and say, all right, what can I do? Or even your life, and what can I do to make things a little bit interesting for myself? Where do I feel like I need to improve on my strengths? What are my weaknesses? How can I pursue something that maybe I've always wanted to do? And, kind of looking at you with your new pursuit of music,
Mm-hmm.
makes me really excited for you. And,
Well, it's funny that 5 year, because I guess a lot of us kind of experience life in these 4 to 5 year chunks, and maybe it's a little bit of a holdover from our academic experience. It's like 4 or 5 years, and then things change, and you move, and you move on to something different. And I remember, so I've been back in Anchorage for 10 years now, and right around 5 years, I was like, well, this is weird. I feel like I need a change. Like just mentally, it felt like, and I remember saying, or having attendings say to me in residency, like, you don't really feel grown up as a clinician, as an attending physician out of residency until about the 5 year mark. And I think that was really accurate. It wasn't until 5 years in that I really felt like I had a handle on, what I knew and what my role was, and confidence in my skill set, and I think many of us have kind of a similar trajectory. So 5 years ago, my mom lived in Wimpus, and we bought a new house. So that was my project. And then I got a big garden built. And then, now we are like 5 years later, and my daughter is 14, and she's kind of pretty self-sufficient, doesn't need quite as much, as parenting, maybe in the same way, to the same level of, physical demands. And then watching her, she's an incredible musician. And that actually really inspired me, because she's going to surpass me here within a year or two if I don't work on it. So she's actually been a huge inspiration for me in this whole music program or project. So, and it's really fun. We're taking guitar together, and we have a really healthy competition, because her fingers, she's younger, they're just more nimble than mine, but I still have an edge on her with music theory, so
you have some flute playing fingers.
Well, I do, but I mean, just like learning a new instrument with a 14-year-old, and I'm 43,
Exactly.
like, and her hands are larger than mine, so she's just like up and down the forehead. But it was been fun. But you're right, that 5 year thing, I think it's definitely a real phenomenon. So who knows where I'll be in 5 years? Hopefully I'll finish the degree, and then I can move on to something else. We'll see.
And that would be amazing to see what you are able to do with that degree. I mean, the new knowledge that you have with, producing and, playing music and composing. So I would love to hear something soon.
Yeah, I am, I don't really have any expectations about this, except that I know that there are just these huge gaps in my musical knowledge. And for me to get to a point where I'm more comfortable composing, I have basic theory things that I have to address. And, so I don't know where it's going to take me, but one thing I have learned along my life, the course of my life, is just kind of keep your ear open for those little ideas. And some of the most rewarding things in my life, like studying art, have been just, when somebody mentions something, or when you asked me if I wanted to play piano accompaniment for you guys, right? Like you end up in these funny little, I don't know, bunny trails that can actually turn into something pretty amazing and a lot of fun.
Exactly. And, as far as your art background, what do you think is most similar to when you compare art to radiology? Do you see any similarities there?
Well, I've been thinking about this with art and radiology and music, as I've been going through kind of the technical aspects of music. With radiology and with art and with music, they all have a very detailed, in-depth, complex technological background, just certain rules that you have to learn. And it's like our first year of medical school, right? I hated it. It was so boring, but you had to learn I tell people it was like taking an old phone book and having to memorize it. They hand it to you and say, look, you just have to memorize this. And that part was miserable, right? The technical acquisition of knowledge. But when you get through that and then you actually have those technical skills, then you can actually do something really neat with it. That's when the art of medicine kicks in. It's when, I can get an idea for a totally new technique that I've never done before in painting and then make it happen. And that's where I'm hoping I'll get with music. I'm hoping that on the other end of 4 years or 5 or 6 years, however long it takes me, of technical knowledge acquisition, that I will be able to then create artistry with it, if that makes sense.
It totally makes sense. I remember I do have an undergrad degree in music, and I had to learn how to play the piano in like the last semester of my last year, because I kind of decided to do it towards the end of my 5 years in undergrad. And I had to learn how to do composition and transposition, and then we had to play these 4-part Bach chorales. And for someone who had never played the piano or been trained in it before, all of a sudden then realized, oh, this is what all this is based on, these chords, these complex chords, and you have to think with your brain and have 2 hands on the piano. And, I was a flute player. And so you're building on so much, and you're so right. Just throughout medical school, it's like a pyramid. You have to have all this foundation to get to the top, to the pinnacle, to where you can say, wow, I'm looking at this image here and I think this is what's going on, but it's built on so many years of, knowledge acquisition and
underlying disease processes and, what they look like. I mean, and that's part of the fun of radiology is it's a lot of it is still Gestalt based, and that will change, I think, over time. But right now it still very much is, you look at something and you see it and you just, it's, they talk about Aunt Minnie's in radiology. Like you can't describe it, but you know her when you see it, and but you have to develop that after, looking at stuff for tens of years. So I remember when I first started radiology and, an attending would walk in and be like, oh, that's that. And then they would wander off and I'm like, how do they do that? I can't even tell where the adrenal glands are. Right. And now I can do that. Right. You look at it and you pull up a study and you're like, oh, this is going on. So it's an interesting transformation over the years. And I think that is what's giving me some courage with the music too. I mean, I'm taking this basic ear training, right? Like ear training 101. And it's funny because we have to sing a lot. I did choir, but I don't have a beautiful singing voice, right? I can maintain a pitch. I was a flute player, right? I know I can maintain pitch, but it's just been really humbling, and my daughter's laughing at me and my husband's laughing at me, and they give us, things like the MASH theme I had to sing in solfeggiate last week, right? And it's so funny because now everything is video. So you actually video yourself and then submit it, and then everybody in the class has to do it, and all the assignments are posted. Oh my gosh, Corinna, I was laughing so hard yesterday because some of them are so bad.
Oh,
and then I'm like, if they can do this, I can do this.
Right.
I was just dying last night looking at everybody else's assignments. And it makes it, I guess it's a humbling exercise for all of us, right? So it is kind of fun that they, even though it's daunting, that they make you post these video assignments of yourself singing, and it makes me realize that everybody else has to do it too. And so I can sing solfeggiate to the match theme as well as anybody else.
Back in the good old days, I should say, when I was in college, I had to take ear training as well. And we did have to sing in front of the other class members. So I can't even imagine recording it and posting it and then.
Right. Oh, it was funny. There was this one guy. And these online classes are such an odd mix of people too. Like, I mean, they're 18-year-olds who are going to college, and then there have actually been a fair number of physicians that are mid-career, midlife like me, going back, and it's just funny to, and it's like Zoom. You're in people's bedroom with like all of their shoes behind them. It's really
all of their color-coded books behind them. Dr. Tauschek has color coordinated bookshelves. It's actually pretty awesome. So we'll have
I've
to
seen
show a picture.
I've seen a number of Instagram memes mocking people like me, but I'm visually dominant and I like the visual symmetry of having the colors grouped. And I actually have them coded in my brain by color. So I'm like, okay, where's that gardening book? I think it has a purple binding.
You have to know where to go to get your books.
Exactly. Exactly.
Is there any advice that you would give to younger physicians about, just their careers in general, or things that you wish that you would have known when you were first coming out of residency or fellowship?
I think, along the lines of what we've been talking about, some of the best and most amazing and fulfilling things of my life have happened when I was willing to take a detour or to try something new, or to be open enough to listen to somebody say, hey, you're taking yourself too seriously. Why don't you take an art class? And not putting up barriers to those things. I think most of us in medicine are type A. We're very driven. We've had to be very goal oriented for our entire life. I wanted to be a medical missionary, and it was actually very hard for me emotionally and intellectually to kind of deviate from that along the way. But at the same time, I deviated from that original plan because I was very honest with myself about what brought me joy, what parts of medicine I really liked. I tried to fill in the blank. I love internal medicine because, and I couldn't, right? But I was able to fill in the blank. I love radiology because, and it's led to an incredibly fulfilling career. So I think, don't put yourself in a box because you think that that's where you have to be. I guess I'm just very grateful that I've taken all these little detours along the way, and I'm still a physician and I love being a radiologist. It's an amazing career, but I still need all of this other right brain stuff to really make me happy.
Mm-hmm.
So, and that was something I did want to mention. I didn't really talk about medical school, but, so I did this undergrad minor in art. And then when I got to medical school, I was like, okay, I have to just study, I need to be serious. I'm paying an awful lot of money for this. I need to make it worthwhile. So I studied. All I did was study for this first 6 months, and I was miserable, and I wasn't performing academically the way that I always had in my life before. And I was not happy. And I thought, well, you know what? Why don't I just take some art classes? And so I started taking classes at the Y in New York City. And then there's actually this amazing place called the Art Students League. And so I started taking a class a semester at the Art Students League. And I would get on the bus with my portfolio, and I would go paint in this random motley assortment of people from New York. And the bizarre thing was that I ended up studying way less. I was way happier, and my grades skyrocketed. And so that was a really strong lesson to me of the value of creativity and being in my right brain. That really stuck with me because there was such a drastic difference. I had been so miserable studying all the time, and I went from that to really having fun, something to look forward, something that was outside medicine. I studied less and my grades were way better. And so it was a really good life lesson for me about overall balance.
Mm-hmm. And I think, just with physician coaching in general, trying to encourage people to look at what might enrich their lives in ways that, aren't just related to medicine, but, maybe trying to find a new hobby or, delving into art or exercise, hiking, traveling, biking, just different things that take your mind off of the stressors of medicine in different ways and creative ways that, I really believe that fostering that in other, physicians is something that I like to encourage. And it's really amazing to hear that your grades all of a sudden went up,
Yeah, it was really bizarre. It was like a
very
tangible difference. So, and even now, like if I start getting too stressed out, my husband or my daughter, they're like, go for a run, go make some art, go play in the garden. They're like, just get yourself disconnected from the stressors and just kind of recoup. So,
and if you recognize too what those things are that can help you de-stress, like for me, I love playing my flute. I've found a lot of time too recently for journaling. That really helps me, to kind of think about the things that I'm thankful for in my life, and also kind of pursuing different business ventures and being creative in that. I think that's something that I never thought that I would ever do, and I really enjoy doing those types of right brain activities too. So I totally understand.
Yeah, it keeps us happy and sane, right?
Exactly. So thank you so much. I really appreciate that you were able to come in today and talk with us about your career, about the ways that you release from medicine, and your successful career, and your advice to younger physicians.
Thank you for having me. It's been fun.
And that wraps up another episode of the Right Brain Rounds podcast with Dr. Corinna Muller. If you would like more resources and information about Dr. Corinna Muller, please visit ladydocs.com.